Before I say a word, I need you to do something for me. Stop. Stop whatever is running in the back of your mind. Stop the noise. Stop the scroll. Stop pretending you are fully here when your soul left the room a long time ago. Because what I am about to share with you is not a lecture. It is not a reminder. It is a warning. There are people walking this earth today, breathing good air, with good eyes, good minds, and they are missing everything. Not because they are blind, but because they chose not to look. And the day will come, and it always comes, when they will wish they had paid attention to every single breath. Don't look away. Not today. There is a thief walking among us. It does not carry a weapon. It does not break down your door in the middle of the night. It does not announce itself. It simply sits beside you, quietly, patiently, and takes everything you were never paying attention to. That thief has a name, and its name is distraction. We live in a generation that has confused being busy with being alive. People wake up in the morning, and before their feet even touch the ground, their eyes are already on a screen. Before they have spoken a word to their spouse, their children, or even to God, they have already given the first and freshest moments of their day to something that will not remember them tomorrow. And they call this living. They call this productivity. They call this keeping up. But nobody stops to ask, keeping up with what? At what cost? And what exactly are you falling behind on while you are so busy keeping up? Here is what nobody tells you about distraction. It does not feel like loss in the moment. It feels like comfort. It feels like entertainment. It feels like connection. You scroll and you feel stimulated. You consume and you feel informed. You stay busy and you feel important. But feelings lie. And while you are feeling all of those things, life, real life, is happening in the room right next to you, behind the door you forgot to open, in the eyes of the person sitting across from you at the dinner table who stopped trying to get your attention months ago. Distraction is dangerous, not because it destroys you loudly, but because it erodes you silently. It takes things from you in small amounts, the way water carves through rock, not with one dramatic blow, but with 1,000 quiet moments of pressure over time. One day you look up, and you cannot explain why your relationships feel hollow. You cannot explain why your purpose feels distant. You cannot explain why, despite everything you have achieved, something feels deeply missing. And the answer is not complicated. The answer is that you were there in body, but absent in spirit for years, and life kept moving without waiting for you to catch up. Think about the moments that matter most in a human life. A child taking their first steps. A parent saying something they have never said before. A friend reaching out in a way that told you, without words, that they were breaking inside. A quiet morning where the answer you had been searching for was right there in the stillness. Had you only been still enough to receive it. These moments do not carry banners. They do not send calendar invitations. They arrive softly, stay briefly, and leave forever. And if your eyes are somewhere else when they come, you will never get them back. Not for any price. Not for any prayer. They are simply gone. And this is where the cost reveals itself, not in what you lost in one dramatic moment, but in the accumulation of 1,000 moments you were present for in body and absent for in soul. The cost of distraction is not paid all at once. It is paid in installments, quietly, consistently, invisibly, until one day the full bill arrives and you realize you have spent your most valuable currency on things that gave you nothing of lasting worth in return. People talk about regret as though it is something that happens to careless people, as though only the reckless and irresponsible end up looking back with aching hearts. But some of the most disciplined, hard-working, successful people in the world carry the heaviest regrets because they mastered the art of showing up everywhere except where it mattered most. They were present at every meeting and absent at every meaningful moment. They answered every email and ignored every signal their own soul was sending them. They built empires and lost intimacy. They gained the world and misplaced themselves somewhere along the way. This is not a story about technology. This is not a lecture about putting your phone down. This is something far deeper than that. This is about the human tendency to be anywhere and everywhere in the mind, while the actual moments of your actual life pass through your fingers like sand you never bothered to hold. There is a word that has stolen more dreams, buried more potential, and quietly destroyed more lives than almost any force on this earth. It is not failure. It is not fear. It is not even doubt. It is a word so small, so innocent-sounding, so deceptively reasonable, that most people never even recognize it as the enemy standing in the middle of their life. That word is later. Later is the most dangerous promise you will ever make to yourself. Because unlike a broken promise that announces itself, unlike a door that slams, a bridge that burns, or a relationship that ends with a clear and definable moment, later simply drifts. It floats, it postpones, it whispers to you in the most reasonable voice you have ever heard, telling you that the time is not right yet, that conditions need to improve, that you need to be more ready, more prepared, more certain before you take the step that your soul has been urging you to take for longer than you are willing to admit. And you believe it. Every single time, you believe it. We were not born believing in later. Watch a child, and you will see what a human being looks like before the world teaches them to delay. A child sees something they want, and they move toward it immediately, completely, without negotiation. They do not say, "I will love you later." They do not say, "I will play later." They do not say, "I will laugh later." They are entirely present to whatever calls them in the moment, because something in them still understands, instinctively, what adults have long forgotten, that the moment in front of you is the only moment that is truly yours. But somewhere between childhood and adulthood, we learned to wait. We were taught patience as a virtue, and patience is indeed a virtue, but we confused patience with postponement. We confused wisdom with hesitation. We confused being ready with being comfortable. And so we began to stack our most important intentions on a shelf labeled later, telling ourselves we would get to them when the time was right, when the money was right, when the situation was right, when we felt right. The time never becomes right on its own. That is the lie that later tells you that it is simply asking you to wait for better conditions. But later is not a waiting room, it is a graveyard, and the things you place there do not rest, they rot. The conversation you kept meaning to have, the apology you kept preparing to give, the dream you kept planning to pursue, the person you kept intending to become, all of them quietly decomposing on the shelf where you placed them with the full intention of coming back. And life, in the meantime, does not pause for your intentions. Life is ruthlessly indifferent to what you meant to do. It does not reward your plans. It does not honor your preparations. It only responds to what you actually did, what you actually said, what you actually chose in the moment when the moment was available. And moments, unlike regrets, do not have the courtesy to wait. There is something no one prepares you for, the specific kind of grief that comes not from losing something suddenly, but from watching something fade because you kept choosing later over now. It is a slow grief, a quiet grief. It does not break you in one moment. It accumulates in the background of your life, like dust gathering in a room you stopped entering. And then one day, you walk back in, and you cannot breathe from the weight of what you allowed to settle there. People believe that later is neutral, that choosing to delay is the same as pressing pause. But there is no pause button on life. When you choose later, you are not stopping time, you are simply removing yourself from it while everything around you continues to move. Relationships evolve without your participation. People grow in directions you were not present to influence. Opportunities close because every open door has a threshold, and thresholds do not stay open indefinitely simply because you intend to walk through them someday. The people who carry the heaviest hearts are rarely the ones who tried and failed. They are the ones who never tried at all, not because they lacked courage, not because they lacked ability, but because they trusted a word that was never worthy of their trust. They handed their one irreplaceable life to a promise that never once kept its word. Nobody leaves. That is what we tell ourselves. Nobody actually disappears overnight. Nobody changes beyond recognition in a single moment. And because we believe this, we allow ourselves the luxury of looking away. We turn our attention elsewhere, to screens, to schedules, to the endless demands of a world that never stops asking for more of us. And we comfort ourselves with the assumption that the people and moments we are neglecting will simply remain exactly as we left them, patient and unchanged, waiting for us to return our gaze. But life does not work that way, and deep down, in the part of you that is still honest with yourself, you already know this. Everything that matters moves. Everything that is alive grows, shifts, evolves and transforms, not dramatically, not in ways that are easy to notice from one day to the next, but consistently, relentlessly, in the small, quiet increments that only become visible when enough of them have accumulated that the change can no longer be ignored. And by the time you notice, you have already missed the process. You have already missed the transition. You are standing at the destination of a journey you were not present for, wondering how everything got here without you. Think about a child you love, not the idea of them. The actual child, at the actual age they are right now, with the actual questions they are carrying, the actual fears they have not yet found the words to express, the actual version of themselves that exists in this specific window of time that will never exist again. That child is changing every single day. The way they look at you, the way they reach for you, the things they find funny, the things that frighten them at night. The window of time in which they still believe you have all the answers is narrower than you think, and it is closing at a pace that has no interest in your schedule or your intentions. And when you look away, when you give that window your distraction instead of your presence, you do not just miss a moment. You miss a version of that person that will never come back, not tomorrow. Not when things settle down, not when life gets less complicated. That version is gone, and the next version will arrive whether you were paying attention to the previous one or not. This is not only about children. This is about every relationship you have chosen to take for granted under the assumption that it will absorb your absence indefinitely. The friend who needed you during a season when you were too wrapped up in your own life to notice. The parent who was still strong enough to hide what they were carrying, so you never thought to ask. The partner who stopped bringing certain things to you, not because they stopped feeling them, but because they learned, gradually and painfully, that you were not fully present enough to receive them. Relationships do not end with arguments. They do not always end with a definitive moment you can point to and say, that is where we lost each other. More often, they end with a long series of moments in which one person looked away and the other person quietly stopped waiting to be seen. The distance that grows between people is rarely dramatic. It is built slowly, brick by brick, from every conversation that was half heard, every moment that was physically shared but emotionally absent. Every time someone reached out in a way that required you to be paying attention to recognize, and you were not. And while all of this is happening on the human level, something is happening inside you as well, because attention is not only about what you give to others, it is about what you receive from life itself. The insight that arrives in a quiet moment you refuse to give yourself. The clarity that comes when you stop filling every silence with noise. The deep and unshakable sense of meaning that only grows in the soil of genuine presence, of being fully awake to where you are, who you are with, and what this moment is asking of you. When you look away from life, life does not look away from you. It continues to offer, it continues to present, it continues to place extraordinary things directly in your path. But if your eyes are always fixed on something else, on the next thing, the better thing, the thing happening somewhere other than exactly where you are, those offerings pass through your hands without leaving a mark. Opportunities do not announce their departure. They do not send a final notice. They do not give you a grace period in which to reconsider. They simply close the way a flower closes at the end of the day, naturally, quietly, completely. And when you finally turn to look, all you find is what remains after presence has already moved on. There is a moment in every life, not announced, not scheduled, not marked on any calendar, when the warnings stop coming, when the signals go quiet, when the nudges that were once gentle become absent altogether. And it is in that silence, that terrible and unfamiliar silence, that most people finally begin to understand what they were given and what they did with it. But by the time that silence arrives, the conversation between life and the person who was not listening has already concluded. And no amount of urgency, no amount of desperation, no amount of sudden awakening can reopen what has already been closed. This is the truth that nobody wants to sit with. That life has a patience which is real but not infinite. That the universe speaks, warns, signals and nudges, but it does not do so forever. There is a threshold. There is a point at which the lesson stops being offered and starts being delivered. And the difference between those two things is enormous. When the lesson is being offered, you have choice. You have the dignity of response. You have the ability to turn, to shift, to course correct before the consequences solidify into something irreversible. But when the lesson is being delivered, all of that is gone. You are no longer a student who can choose to open the book. You are simply someone living inside the result of every time you chose not to. Most people do not take the warnings seriously because the warnings at first are soft. A tension in the body that you explain away as stress. A restlessness in the soul that you silence with entertainment. A voice inside you that keeps returning to the same question, the same unresolved thing that you keep burying under the noise of daily life, because answering it would require a courage you have not yet decided to find. And so you ignore it, not maliciously, not with the conscious intention of self-destruction, but with the quiet, habitual, almost automatic decision to deal with it later, to feel it tomorrow, to face it when you are stronger, when you are more ready, when you have more time. But the body keeps the score, the soul keeps the record, and life keeps moving the clock forward, whether or not you have done anything meaningful with the time already given to you. Think about the people who only discovered what they had after it was gone. The man who worked every weekend and missed every ordinary Tuesday evening with his family, ordinary Tuesdays that in their ordinariness were actually extraordinary, and who only understood this at a funeral, standing over someone he loved, realizing that the last real conversation they had was years ago, and he could no longer remember what was said. The woman who ignored every signal her health was sending her because she was too busy, too needed, too important to stop, until her body made the decision for her and stopped on its own terms, not hers. The person who kept meaning to repair a relationship, kept drafting the message in their head, kept almost making the call until the other person stopped being reachable, not out of anger, but simply because life had moved them somewhere else entirely. These are not cautionary tales about other people, these are mirrors. And the reason they are uncomfortable to look into is not because they are distant from your experience. It is because some part of you recognizes the reflection. The alarm is still ringing for you. That is why you are here. That is why something in you responded to these words, why something in you leaned forward instead of away. The fact that you can still feel the pull of urgency, the weight of what has been left unaddressed, the quiet ache of knowing there are things in your life that require your full and immediate attention, that feeling is not an accusation. It is an invitation. It is the alarm, still sounding, still giving you the rarest and most precious gift that life can give a human being. The gift of not yet. Not yet too late to be present. Not yet too late to reach out. Not yet too late to turn toward the things and the people and the purposes that your distraction has been quietly stealing from you. Not yet too late to wake up fully, completely, with the kind of intentionality that transforms not just what you do, but who you are in every room you enter and every life you touch. But not yet is not the same as not ever. And the distance between those two phrases is measured not in years or months or days, it is measured in the decision you make in this moment, right now, about whether you will finally open your eyes all the way or continue to live in the comfortable half-darkness of a life only partially inhabited. The alarm is ringing. It has been ringing. The question that sits at the center of everything, The question that this moment is asking you directly, without apology and without patience for delay, is simply this. How much longer are you going to let it ring before you finally, fully, completely wake up? Every keynote you just heard is not a speech, it is a mirror. The cost of distraction, the lie of later, the people you are missing, the alarm that will not ring forever. None of this is theory, this is your life, right now, today. And the most dangerous thing you can do in this moment is walk away and do nothing with what you just felt. That feeling in your chest, that is not discomfort, that is awareness. And awareness is the first step toward everything that changes. Do not let it fade. Share this with someone who needs to wake up. Drop in the comments what hit you the hardest, because someone out there is waiting for exactly what you just heard.